At 6:47 a.m., a bulldozer's steel claw tears through the greenhouse ridge beam, shattering decades of research in a shower of glass. Heirloom tomato vines snap under the treads. Heritage seeds scatter into the soil like scattered secrets.
Stop. That's my greenhouse. You have no right.
Sir, calm down. This is a legal demolition by HOA order. Don't make me arrest you.
Mr. Vance, this eyesore violated every architectural guideline. The board voted. You should have read the CC on ours.
You might want to check who you are bulldozing. I am the State Agriculture Commissioner.
Deputy Miller's face drains. The other deputy steps back, suddenly aware they've crossed a line. Barbara's smugness flickers. She fumbles her clipboard, the page of violations suddenly worthless.
Every lawn, every golf course, every pesticide permit in this community crosses my desk. Think about that.
He turns and walks away, leaving the deputies staring at the rubble and the commissioners retreating back. 2 days before the bulldozer, Barbara Whitfield strode onto Anthony Vance's research plot with a phone camera and a clipboard full of rules.
Ma'am, you are trespassing on private agricultural land. I am going to have to ask you to leave.
Private? This is Oak Ridge AOA territory, and that structure violates every architectural guideline we have. I am documenting it.
Anthony produced a thick folder of agricultural zoning permits, dating back 15 years.
This greenhouse predates the HOA. It's a state-registered research facility. Your guidelines don't apply here.
The CCR say any structure over 500 square feet needs board approval. Yours is over 1,200.
She snapped a photo of the greenhouse, then scribbled a violation notice on her clipboard.
You are filing a complaint. I just showed you the state permits. This is harassment.
The board will review it. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about.
By evening, the complaint was filed, and the board had scheduled a vote for Thursday. The clock was ticking. Thursday evening, the HOA board gathered under fluorescent lights. Barbara sat at the head of the table, a thick binder labeled CC and Rs in front of her.
This greenhouse is a legitimate agricultural research facility, pre-existing and exempt under state zoning law. I've brought the permits.
Permits. Our CC and Rs clearly state any permanent structure over 500 square feet requires board approval. He never applied.
I didn't need to. It was built before the HOA existed. You are ignoring state agricultural protections. This is a targeted harassment.
A few board members shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between Anthony's permits and Barbara's scowl. But Barbara leaned forward.
We're not a farming community. That greenhouse is an eyesore and it's hurting property values. I move we vote to demolish it.
The vote came quickly, hands rising one after another. 5 in favor, 2 against. The motion carried.
You'll regret this. I warned you, but demolition won't undo what comes next. Good night.
He pushed through the door into the night. The boardroom went silent except for the scratch of Barbara's pen circling a date on the demo order. The demolition was scheduled for Monday at dawn. Anthony had 72 hours to decide how hard to hit back. Anthony walked back into the rubble alone, knelt, and lifted a broken Brandywine tomato stem. The root ball was crushed, soil spilling through his fingers.
Phyllis, this is Vance. Suspend every irrigation permit for Oak Ridge, HOA's golf course. I want the water off by noon.
He tapped the suspension protocol on his screen without hesitation, then pulled up the pesticide license list for the HOA's contractor. By 1 p.m., a neon green stop work order fluttered on the golf course gate. Every sprinkler head stood dry. The lawn contractor stared at the certified letter in his hand. His state pesticide license was suspended, effective immediately.
This is Barbara. The golf course irrigation just died. What the hell did you do, Vance?
You demolished a state-registered research facility. Your drought exemption is next. Enjoy the brown lawns.
The contractor thrust the letter toward Barbara. She read it, face draining. No pesticides meant no weed control.
He can't do this. The board won't stand for it. We'll sue for harassment.
But by nightfall, the sprinklers stayed silent, and the first brown edges appeared on the fairways. The war had barely begun. By Thursday morning, brown patches had spread from the fairways to the lawns on Hartwell Circle. The soil cracked like old leather. Neighbors gathered in small clusters, pointing at the rust-colored blotches that no sprinkler could wash away.
It's a paperwork delay. Maintenance will have it fixed by the weekend.
Community update. Due to an administrative oversight, state irrigation permits were inadvertently suspended. We are working to resolve this immediately.
That ought to keep them quiet.
At the golf course entrance, the stop work order flapped in the morning breeze, and a resident photographed it with his phone. The lawn contractor's truck sat idle. He'd been forced to lay off his crew. No pesticide, no money.
We're not backing down. He'll run out of leverage.
But the lawns didn't wait for leverage. Brown spread like a stain, and the first complaints landed in the HOA inbox. The community was waking up to the fact that their green privilege had vanished overnight. Barbara's story was already wearing thin. By Friday, residents gathered on every street corner, comparing photos of dead lawns and wondering who to blame.
The board is pursuing legal action. This isn't a permanent situation.
A woman held up her phone, the stop work order glowing on the screen. This isn't administrative oversight, she snapped. Barbara fired off a second newsletter, this time naming Anthony directly and accusing him of a personal vendetta. Urgent update. State Commissioner Anthony Vance has retaliated against our community for enforcing architectural standards.
He thinks he can bulldoze our rules by cutting off water. We won't be intimidated.
But the brown crept under fences and across sidewalks. Indifferent to newsletters, small knots of neighbors began to talk openly about the board's incompetence. A teenager chalked a wilting flower on the driveway. Even the kids were noticing. Barbara's inbox filled with replies. When do we get our green back? The tide was turning. That afternoon, in his sterile state office, Anthony pulled up the subsidy disbursement logs for Oak Ridge HOA.
We've sent them grants for years. But these totals, something isn't matching.
He cross-referenced the board's maintenance budget against his department's payout records. A line item for irrigation upgrade showed $80,000. His office had approved $50,000. Another entry for fertilizer procurement listed payments to a vendor absent from the state registry.
They've been forging applications. This is outright fraud.
He printed the incriminating sheets, circled every discrepancy, and the stack grew thick.
I want a full forensic audit of Oak Ridge HOA. Every subsidy, every recipient, every cent.
The audit request hit the system. An automatic freeze icon blinked, but he overrode it without pause. By midnight, he knew the pristine lawns of Oak Ridge had been watered with stolen state funds. 10 days after the demolition, the lawns of Oak Ridge lay like a rumpled brown carpet, threadbare under the August sun. Inside the cramped boardroom, the monthly meeting had turned into an inquisition. Voices overlapped, fingers jabbed at maps.
I've told you, we're fighting the suspension in court. It's a matter of weeks, not months.
Greg Whitfield sat at the end, a sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the noisy air conditioner. A board member leaned forward. And what about the grant money? That was supposed to cover the new irrigation.
The state grants are a separate matter. Our treasurer has everything accounted for.
She promised she'd handle this. Now they're asking questions I can't answer.
Outside, the visual evidence was damning. Lawns had turned to dust, and even the retirees' prize roses had wilted. The meeting broke without a decision, but the cracks in the board were now public. Barbara's grip was slipping, and Greg hadn't slept in 3 days. He'd seen the commissioner's name on the audit request. The next morning, a state forensic accountant arrived at Anthony's office, her laptop loaded with financial tracing software.
Commissioner, the discrepancies are systematic. Someone inside the HOA forged these subsidy applications.
They spread the documents across the conference table, red circles blooming around every forged signature. The accountant pointed to the treasurer approval line. The signature loop was unmistakably Greg Whitfield's.
That's Barbara's husband. The quiet one at the board meetings. He's the treasurer. Is this pattern across all the grants? Every irrigation upgrade, every pesticide subsidy.
Yes, over $200,000 misappropriated over 3 years, all routed through his office.
Anthony traced the forged G. Whitfield with his finger, the ink slightly smudged where Greg had pressed too hard. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, forged approvals, and a clear trail from the HOA's accounts to the Whitfield's personal spending. He closed the file, the weight of prosecution in his hands. But first, he needed to freeze everything. Anthony logged into the state subsidy portal and clicked freeze all disbursements without hesitation. The screen blinked red. By 3 p.m., a certified letter arrived at the HOA office. Barbara tore it open in the boardroom, surrounded by silent members.
They've frozen every grant. Investigation for fraud? This is a personal attack.
She stormed home and found Greg in the kitchen, his face gray as the fax paper clutched in his hand.
Greg, tell me you didn't sign those applications. Tell me you didn't put our name on forged documents.
I only did what you asked. You said it was standard practice.
I never told you to forge a commissioner's signature. We're finished, you idiot.
The HOA's maintenance accounts showed 0. The contractor's last invoice bounced. Barbara stared at the freeze confirmation, her hands trembling. For the first time, the law had a name and an address, and it was coming for them. At dawn, a yellow notice appeared on every community bulletin board. Drought exemption revoked. All irrigation must cease immediately. By noon, every lawn in Oak Ridge had turned the color of old bone. The soil cracked and separated, revealing the skeletal grid of dormant roots. Residents gathered, some holding copies of the notice, their voices sharp with betrayal. They knew this was coming and told us nothing.
The board is contesting this. It's a temporary setback while we pursue legal action.
I signed everything you put in front of me. But you are the one who demanded the best lawns in the county. You wanted the golf course to rival the country club. We couldn't afford it without the grants.
So you stole from the state to pay for my landscaping? You idiot, we're finished.
Outside, the visual evidence was damning. The once manicured lawns were a wasteland. From above, Oak Ridge looked like a patch of desert dropped in the middle of green farmland. The community was in open revolt, and Barbara Whitfield had no more lies to tell. That night, the remaining board members called an emergency session. The agenda had a single line: vote of no confidence in Barbara Whitfield. They voted 4-1. Barbara refused to surrender the gavel, her knuckles white around the wooden handle.
I built this community from dirt. You can't vote me out of my own HOA. This is a personal vendetta by Vance.
By morning, the story had leaked. A news van with a satellite dish idled at the gate, reporter adjusting her earpiece. She stopped a resident. Did the board know about the subsidy fraud before cutting your water? The camera rolled from above. The drone feed showed a brown patchwork where green lawns had been, the golf course looking like a forgotten battlefield. Barbara watched from her window, the phone pressed to her ear, ordering the board to issue a statement denying everything.
Dan, issue a press release. Say there's been a misunderstanding. The commissioner is misusing his authority.
In his state office, Anthony flipped on the 6 o'clock news. The lead story showed the bulldozed greenhouse, then Barbara's face, frozen and guilty. He slowly nodded. The no-confidence vote was public knowledge. The real trial was just beginning. The state attorney general's office opened a criminal investigation into Oak Ridge HOA. The press release named the treasurer, Greg Whitfield. A process server met Greg at his front door and handed him a thick envelope. He'd been subpoenaed for all financial records.
I need need you to represent us. It's all a misunderstanding. Vance is behind this.
The receptionist put her on hold for 10 minutes, then a curt refusal. Conflict of interest. No further comment. She dialed 2 more numbers. Each firm declined before she finished the sentence. The word was out. Neighbors who once waved now crossed the street when they saw the Whitfields' car. Children were told not to play near their house.
They're not coming back, are they? Everyone knows.
The subpoena lay unfolded on his desk, his forged signatures circled in red, screaming guilt into the silent room. By the next morning, a for sale sign had been planted in their front yard, the first admission of defeat. The phone didn't ring. The community had rendered its verdict without a single spoken word. Anthony Vance stepped to the podium, state seal behind him, camera flashes strobing through the tense, silent room.
Our office uncovered systematic fraud in a community that diverted state agricultural subsidies for personal gain. The brown lawns you've seen on the news, those are the result. Their irrigation died because the subsidy money never reached the intended projects. Every dollar that was supposed to keep those lawns green was pocketed by the very people who enforced the architectural rules.
He clicked a remote. On the screen behind him, redacted financial documents appeared, numbers circled in glaring red. The footage cut to a live drone feed of Oak Ridge, the brown patchwork a silent, damning exhibit.
We will hold those responsible fully accountable, but the investigation is ongoing, so I can't name names today.
Reporters erupted. He raised a hand, silenced them with a look. Your lawns will recover. Trust in the process. By evening, the clip had 1 million views. Comments flooded in. He killed their grass and he's the good guy. Public opinion had done what law alone could not. It had turned the HOA into pariahs before a single arrest was made. Barbara Whitfield walked into the local television studio, her fuchsia blazer freshly pressed, her smile a brittle shield over the panic beneath.
Commissioner Vance is abusing his power because we enforced rules he didn't like. He had that greenhouse declared agricultural retroactively.
The interview aired at noon. Within an hour, a state employee leaked the forensic audit documents to a competing station. The screen filled with Greg Whitfield's forged signatures, each one circled in red next to the authentic commissioner approval they'd overwritten.
This is a setup. Vance leaked those himself.
The news anchor highlighted the 80,000 irrigation upgrade, overbilled by 30,000, the excess traced directly to the Whitfield's personal account. Barbara froze mid-scream, the remote slipping from her fingers as the broadcast cut to a live shot of her own house. The for sale sign prominent, social media exploded. Her interview clip became a meme, her denials layered over the forged signatures in a damning split screen. By evening, even the board members who had supported her released a joint statement disavowing any knowledge of the fraud. She was alone. The front door shook with a heavy knock. Barbara didn't move. She knew who it was, and she knew Greg wouldn't answer. 2 agents stepped through the open front door. Greg Whitfield stood in the hallway, shoulders slumped, and offered his wrists before they asked. Barbara watched from the living room, the flashing red and blue lights staining her walls. She made no sound.
Tell the board, I'll settle this without further charges under 2 conditions: a public apology, televised, and I rebuild my greenhouse twice the size.
He pulled out the blueprints he'd drawn weeks ago, a 2400 square f-foot advanced greenhouse with automated climate control. He'd been ready since the day they tore it down. Within the hour, the interim HOA president called back. The board accepts. We'll schedule the hearing. The news broke Greg's arrest and the commissioner's demand simultaneously. State ag boss versus HOA trended within minutes.
It's not revenge, it's restoration. Every dollar they stole gets recovered. Every regulation they ignored gets enforced, and every seed they buried gets replanted.
The hearing was set for Monday. Barbara would read the apology she'd fought hardest against, The board had no other leverage. Construction permits for the new greenhouse were fast-tracked by the same office that had frozen the subsidies. The irony was lost on no one. The HOA had nowhere left to run. Their only path forward led through a microphone, a packed auditorium, and an apology that would be heard across the state. Monday morning, under the glare of network lights, Barbara Whitfield took her seat at the long oak table. Her hands trembled as she unfolded a single typed page.
On behalf of the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association, I apologize to Commissioner Vance and to this community for the unlawful demolition and the misappropriation of state funds.
The microphone amplified every crack in her voice. In the front row, the board members stared at the table, none of them meeting the camera lens.
This wasn't a paperwork error. It was a deliberate fraud enabled by a board that valued aesthetics over integrity. The brown lawns outside are the consequence of that choice.
Behind him, the monitor displayed a live drone feed of Oak Ridge, 280 homes surrounded by dead grass, silent testimony to the abuse of power.
I am not here for revenge. I am here to ensure that every subsidy dollar meant for agriculture is spent on agriculture and that no board can ever bulldoze the law again.
The camera cut to a house on Hartwell Circle, the yellow irrigation revoked notice still clinging to the window, the lawn beyond it a dead mat of roots. Anthony stepped back from the podium. The hearing room fell into a thick, charged silence. The board members filed out without speaking. Barbara remained seated, the apology still quivering in the air above the table. The broadcast reached over 1 million homes. Oak Ridge became a cautionary symbol, not of architectural standards, but of what happens when petty power meets the real authority it forgot to respect. Crews arrived the next morning. Steel beams rose from the same soil where the bulldozer had left its scars. Anthony oversaw every beam placement, every glass pane. The footprint was twice the original. His vision finally realized. Within a month, the completed greenhouse gleamed, a cathedral of glass and steel. Automated vents opened to the morning sun. A wooden sign was planted at the entrance. Oak Ridge Research Station. No HOA compliance note could touch it. Inside, Anthony walked the aisles, his hands brushing the first trays of heritage tomato seedlings.
They wanted an eyesore. They got a monument to due process. And every tomato that grows here will taste like jurisdiction.
Residents driving past slowed to look. The greenhouse stood not as an eyesore, but as a reminder of their own board's corruption. A few brought seedlings as awkward peace offerings. Anthony accepted them without a word, his quiet forgiveness louder than their apologies. He placed one in a labeled pot, then stood back, the rows of green stretching behind him like a verdant testimony. The sun set behind the glass roof, and the commissioner's research station glowed, the only structure in Oak Ridge that had never needed permission to grow. The golf course remained chained shut. Fairways now a mat of dried mud. The state fines for unauthorized irrigation attempts accumulated weekly. A faded sign read, "Temporarily closed." It had become a permanent fixture along with the resentment it bred. Barbara's house sold well below market value. The new owners tore out the dying front yard and planted cactus. No HOA rule prevented xeriscaping anymore. The board had been stripped of most authority pending the state's final ruling. Neighbors gathered at the street edge, looking toward the greenhouse. Some spoke in hushed tones about their earlier support for the demolition. They'd voted with Barbara. Now their lawns were dead, their golf course gone, and their property values had dropped 12%. The Oak Ridge subdivision sign was spray-painted overnight. A single word, dripping red, shame. No one moved to clean it. The new board, still forming, had no budget for aesthetics. Anthony walked the perimeter of his greenhouse, the community's remorse visible but unspoken. He offered no satisfaction, only the quiet presence of justice served. The greenhouse stood as a landmark, a glass monument to the fact that even the pettiest power must kneel before the law. Early morning light filtered through the glass as Anthony knelt by a fresh soil bed, a packet of heritage tomato seeds in his weathered hand.
Grandpa always said, soil remembers everything. Be patient, and it'll tell you who you are.
He pressed each seed into the dark earth, spacing them with the precision of a man who had planted faith before. The wooden label read Brandywine Heritage in his own careful script, the date freshly inked beneath. Standing, he looked down the long rows of seedlings, the green a silent chorus to the brown lawns beyond the glass.
They thought they were tearing down a greenhouse. They were planting a precedent.
The automated climate system hummed, a lullaby of mist and regulated warmth that no HOA board could silence. He touched a leaf, its surface cool and living, and allowed himself the smallest of smiles. On a hook by the door, he hung his state seal lapel pin, the red circle catching the light like a quiet sentinel. Outside, the world had moved on, but inside the Oak Ridge Research Station, Anthony Vance had already reaped his harvest. The new HOA board was sworn in the following week. Their platform, transparency, lower fees, and a written apology to the commissioner. No fuchsia blazers, no clipboards. The ceremony lasted 12 minutes. A resident approached Anthony near the greenhouse gate. She didn't speak at first, just held a folded paper.
You don't need to thank me. Just make sure the next board remembers what happened here.
She placed a certificate of appreciation in his hand, signed by every new board member. He read it, the faintest smile breaking his weathered face. Then he folded it and slipped it into his barn jacket.
Not bad for an eyesore.
Neighbors watched from porches. A few waved. The normalcy was tentative but real. The Oak Ridge Research Station sign caught the sun, its letters clean and untarnished by HOA interference. The community had learned its lesson in the hardest currency, dead grass and public shame, but learn it did. Anthony sat on his porch, coffee cooling in his hands, the greenhouse glowing in the distance like a promise kept.
Grandpa's note said, don't let the bastards take what's yours. Didn't say anything about getting it back double.
The research station stood sentinel, its glass panes capturing the last light, a monument to patience and paperwork. Beyond the glass, the HOA's lawns showed faint streaks of green. Recovery had begun, but the memory of dead grass would linger.
Not bad for an eyesore.
The sun dipped lower, and the greenhouse seemed to absorb the light, storing it for the seedlings inside. Tomorrow, the new board would meet. Their first resolution, never again override state law. But for tonight, all was quiet. No threats, no inspectors, no surrender. He stood, stretched, and walked inside, leaving behind a world that had finally learned its lesson. The porch light clicked off. Only the greenhouse remained, a constellation of glass on the prairie.